This is Ben Summer. I own and operate bandslikerush.com, a music discovery podcast and blog featuring up-and-coming progressive rock bands. Enjoy this video edition of the podcast and check out my own music. Visit my website at bensummer.com. If you sign up for the email list, you'll get 3 free downloads. This is Ben Summer, musician, recording artist. You can find out more about me on my website, bensummer.com. That's summer with an O. This is the second in a series of podcasts that are posted to the website, bandslikerush.com. My interview today is with Mike Hyder, who is the lead guitarist and primary songwriter for the UK-based band, The Treat. The Treat has a unique sound that blends kind of classic progressive rock with a bit of folk, with a bit of hard-edged hard rock. And as an American listener, I'm always struck by and take notice of a British singer like Mike, whose British accent comes through in the vocal performance, especially since to a casual admirer of UK rock music, it's always seemed that the American blues vocal style is what was emulated. So anyway, all that to say that The Treat kind of presents a unique package and a very intriguing sound. And what you're hearing right now is a track off their last album called Citizen of the World, which is a great one. We'll talk a little bit about that album, the double album, their current activities, and what they have planned for the future. Hope you enjoy it. Hi, this is Ben Summer. I'm here with Mike Hyder, who's a band leader, guitarist, and main songwriter for UK-based band The Treat. Hey, thanks for joining, Mike. You were just asking how we heard about you.
Yes, that's right.
So this podcast is for a site I just started a few weeks ago, and the maiden voyage was an interview with a U.S.-based prog rock band called Tiles. And so I have a friend at a Rush fan site who posted an announcement about the site, and with a link to this first interview and a call to the readers of that site. So, Ben's looking for other lesser known, bands in the same kind of artistic space, who, Rush fans or any prog rock fans might like to interview. So that your name was thrown out there, The Treat, as well as, a lot of the other big ones who I, would have a hope, at least at this point of interviewing, like Dream Theater, et cetera, all the usuals. Right, so I checked your music out. I really liked it, and I thought it's a perfect fit. So I hadn't heard of you guys until, I'm kind of I'm not the most knowledgeable guy, although I'm just a music fan and a composer and musician myself. So this is as much for me to find, great bands like yourselves who are kind of on the upswing as anything.
Oh, well, that's good to hear, because we've actually been going for some years, but it's only in the last 2 to 3 years, or really actually just about 2 years, that we've started to get quite a bit of national publicity in music magazines here in the UK, particularly classic rock, which I know sells in the United States at various places. I know because I've actually bought copies of it in the US when I've been over. And also there's a new magazine called Classic Rock Presents Prog, and we were in the first 2 issues of that with 2 tracks off our last album, Audio Verite, and we got a review. And would you believe, in that very magazine, one of the introduction passages, they said that although our music reminds them of established prog rock bands from the classic heyday of prog rock, which would be the late 60s and the early 70s, Yes, Genesis, all those people, King Crimson, but also they said that there's a modern twist to what we're doing, which has a harder metallic edge of Rush. They actually mentioned Rush specifically in the same sentence as ourselves, so we were quite pleased with that. And now, 1 or 2 other people have also mentioned there's an occasional similarity between the Treat sound and the classic Rush sound. And now here you are, and you're saying a sort of a similar thing. So I don't know, maybe great minds think alike.
Yeah, I think so. It's funny when I interviewed Tile. So the angle of my site is bands like Rush. It's kind of a simplistic and Actually, some people it's rubbing the wrong way. Simplistic way to introduce fans of the classic, that old power trio to new music, which is maybe, to broaden their horizons. But when I interviewed Tiles the last time, they particularly have it's been a double-edged sword. They've been accused of just outright mimicry and trying to ride the coattails, and so they had a kind of a pejorative sense that here's another guy comparing them to Rush, where it seems you think differently.
Yeah, well, I do think differently because I don't know. Maybe we've made a slightly longer journey over a longer period of time. I mean, there is an old tenet, isn't there, in the entertainment business in general, that there's no such thing as bad publicity. And then, although on the one hand, I don't necessarily completely agree with that, but I mean, to be honest, certainly when I was growing up, and I think this is still true even now, just about, or it's certainly true with a slightly more older fan base of people that might be listening, and that is that you like a certain type of music and a certain type of band, let's say, and then if you hear other groups being mentioned in the same breath, that at least points you in that direction. Right. And whether the similarity is great or it's not so great or whatever, at least you've had exposure. I mean, you need the exposure people need to have heard of you to begin with in order to make a decision about whether they're liking what you're doing or they're not liking what you're doing, right, or they think what you're doing is great, or if you're a clone, they think you're a clone of somebody else, or you have a little bit of a twist of that band, but you do your own things. I mean, we've personally never been sort of completely compared to Rush in the sense of in terms of being a clone band or anything like that, and that's obviously great, but that we have enough of our own character. But there has been a mention occasionally, and I can see what that, I mean, for me personally, I can see what that is there are three people in this band, there are three people in that band. I mean, okay, there are lots of trios, but we do have, we do know how to rock out and rock really hard and fast and furious, and so do Rush. And then Rush also have that kind of mellower side that they've had over the years, maybe earlier on, but that people remember things like Rivendell, which they did very early on, and even bits of 2112, and Closer to the Heart was quite mellow. And I know that Rush themselves don't like to play, sort of slightly disown that song, but I think it's a great song, Yeah. And we have that sort of mellower side and playing a lot, especially on the last album, Audio Verite Deceptive Blends, which is a double album of ours that we put out a few months ago and got some really good reviews for. There's an acoustic side, and then there's the harder rocking kind of side that we have, and I think that's where they're kind of, oh, there are three people in that band, there are three people in this band. Oh, they do acoustic and hard rock, and okay, this band do acoustic and hard rock. So on certain levels, yeah, I mean, let's put it this way: we're extremely closer to Rush than we are to, Britney Spears or somebody like
I hope
that. So. Thank God.
Yeah, I agree. I want to get into your last album. I know it's still current, and it seems like from your bio, it seems like it was a big deal to do a double album. But why don't we back up and give people who are just totally unfamiliar with y'all a quick intro of your history and where you're at and in your life,
okay.
et cetera.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously myself, I sort of formed the band. I was sort of, in and out of bands here and there, and finally I've sort of got down to a sort of a power trio format, and Rush were definitely one of the bands I had in mind, and also, to be honest, also older bands that a lot of your audience, I would imagine, including the Rush guys themselves, have paid homage to Cream, Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker, Jack Bruce, that kind of classic power trio that interested me. So I wanted to have it within that format, and I formed the Treat around about, actually some years ago now. It was around about 2001, and we rehearsed for a long time, really trying to, get a set together and so on. I wrote a collection of songs for the band, and we spent most of 2002 doing all the usual sort of clubs and pubs and playing all around London and Oxford, which is where we're based in the UK, and, in Birmingham and various places all around the UK mainly. And We also released a single called Agent 555, and that was played on various local radio stations, and internet radio in particular picked up on it as well. And then in 2003, we finally kind of got it together to, record an album. Obviously, recording costs are expensive, so we couldn't just fly in and do it. We had to build up to it. And in 2003, we did the first album in Technicolor, and that was more, actually, now that I think about it, the similarities with Rush are quite a few, because with Rush, if you listen to their first album with the original drummer in the band, it's very much a power trio album, slightly in the shadow of Led Zeppelin and people like that, all those songs, right. Working Man and so on. And then from the second album, when Neil Peart joined, then they kind of really started to branch out and got a lot more, shall we say, progressive. And in that respect, this was not deliberate on my part. I did not set this up this way. It just happened to be that way. And maybe that's the way bands are. Your first album is full of energy. It's kind of songwriting and rehearsals and on the road and stuff, and you just bang, 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 bang. Let's get out there and show them what we're all about, sort of thing. And the very first album, if you listen to in Technicolor, that's our first album, the Treat's first album. It rocks hard and it's serious, and it's not full on metal, okay. I mean, it is rock in the traditional and classic sense. I suppose 1970s inspired, but with a kind of slightly modern twist to it. And so that kind of, won over the kind of the rock audiences, and we sort of started to get, quite a bit of positive feedback with that. And then a little bit later on, we did have sort of a little bit of a lineup change and so on, and we sort of started rehearsing more and more, and I really broadened out the songwriting. The musicianship got better, so I was able to explore ideas that I'd had for a long time in terms of time signatures and, basically just different tempos and things. And we spent, I suppose, really from about 2005 onwards, just experimenting, doing a lot of studio work. One of the guys that we work with, who's an engineer, he, has his studio here locally, and, we're able to sort of kind of more or less go in and out. Not quite on the same level as the Beatles went in and out of Abbey Road, at their own will. But it's local, and, we go in, and whenever I have ideas, we bang them down and so on. And so from 2005 onwards, there was a lot of experimenting that went on musically, and the first fruits of that came around, I suppose, end of 2007, early 2008. We had the Phonography album that came out, which was our second record, which has got a lot of quite heavy rock stuff on it, and some of which may well be reminiscent of Rush, things like Fanfare for the King, Make You Crawl. Some of these tracks are up on our MySpace site, which is, if I can put in a little plug here,
yes.
myspace.com/The Treat UK. And by the way, if you want to find out lots of things about the band, it's of course www.thetreat.co.uk, and you can send us messages from there as well. There's an email address, and the band you will be answered to, if you send us an email there, any of your listeners.
I can prove that. You guys answered me.
Indeed. But certainly with the Phonography album, that's where the guy, there's quite a big well-known writer here in England, a guy called Jeff Barton, who used to write for Sounds magazine and writes for Kerrang, which is quite a famous hard rock magazine. Rush have appeared in it loads of times. Rush were, appeared in Sounds magazine and so on, and he picked up on us as well, and he picked up on that kind of hard rocking side and also the prog side, and he's been championing us, thank God, quite a lot in Classic Rock magazine, and then again now it has a sister publication, Classic Rock Presents Prog. And it's quite interesting actually, because the very first time we got our piece of national publicity, a quite big national publicity, which was a review for Phonography, which Jeff Barton did, obviously we were kind of 2 paragraphs on about page 50 or whatever, which is fair enough. Yeah. And right there on the front